But now we're going to jump into our mailbox. We got some killer questions today, so I'm going to take it away with number one. And our first question is, what are the best rep ranges for toning up?
So this is a really good question. And primarily when people think toning up, losing fat, all that stuff, like they've always thought in the higher rep range, they've always thought like 20 reps, 25 reps, like all that stuff. I thought it was being busted for a while. Speaking of myths, we actually do have an episode coming out this Thursday about all these myths, so you're going to make sure to tune into that one because there's a lot of great stuff we cover. But more or less, like the range that I'd say is best for most people would be in like the 8 to 12 range for hypertrophy. However, where a lot of people struggle is they'll take this and like only work in the 8 to 12 rep range. I truly believe for the most part, anywhere between 5 and 15 does have its purpose. It depends on what movement you're doing. If you're going to start to do a bunch of deadlifts and you're in the 15 rep range, is probably not going to be the most ideal for you. More of a compound movement, more of a strength based movement, and will see some incredible benefits in like the 5 to 8 rep range. Sometimes even lower. We'll have some people doing 3 to 4 just for like a strength side of things. But more or less, like the biggest answer is just that it really depends on the actual programming, and that's where I think a lot of people struggle, is because they'll just like take specifics and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to do 3 sets of 10 for everything, but they won't allow themselves to see progress within the periodization, the progressive overload, like all these things that make a really big difference. And last but not least, a lot of toning, which is just simply putting on muscle, losing fat, a fancy term for it, comes from a lot of other factors such as diet, sleep, just recovery, like all this other stuff. So on top of the programming, there's a lot of other things to consider, making sure you're in a slight calorie deficit, you're doing a little bit of cardio, you're monitoring your calorie intake. So I'd say these things make such a big difference. But yeah, hopefully that question answer is helpful, and I'm sure Josh will have a few other things to say.
Kyle knocked it out of the park there. If you're expecting to tone just from doing high rep, you're missing out. And high rep is awesome. It's really good. You're going to build a lot of endurance within a muscle, and it's its own thing. But where there's a big drawback with high rep, I have no problem with high rep training, but I think you need a ridiculous level of discipline to excel with it. For me to truly be correct and fatigue myself at like 15 plus reps, it is so confusing. Like you'll think you're there and then you're like, oh, I can actually probably do 30 with this weight. Like it's really hard to truly find that correct weight. And when you're doing something for like 20 reps to near failure, it's very hard to gauge once again. And you'll find your mind will give out off where your body will. You'll get bored. You won't maintain mind-muscle connection. And I just find it's a little bit of a misnomer, because people, especially that don't want to gain too much muscle, they'll say, hey, well, I want to avoid that, so I'm going light. And yes, you're not going to gain a ton of muscle, but you're also not really going to make much progress. If you're only operating at like 70% of your potential, you're not where you want to be. You want to be in that place where you may have maybe 1, 2, 3 reps left in the tank at most. That's where you can be in a good spot where you can achieve hypertrophy, actually challenge your muscles, cause the damage for them to heal, grow, and become stronger. And in general, if you want to be a toned person, just gain some muscle. You'll get rid of that little flabbiness on your body, and instead actually just lower your body fat. And you can hold a lot of muscle, have low body fat, and look very lean, have it make it look very natural. If it was the case that we'd all look like bodybuilders, I'd be way bigger, Kyle would be way bigger. We train super hard, and like I don't care to be the world's biggest, most jacked bodybuilder in the world, but I do like putting on muscle, but I also like maintaining my leanness. And if you're new to the gym, you can always gauge and play with that. But I don't know anyone who's like, maybe 1 out of 100 people will say I'm getting too muscular too quickly. Oftentimes people find they're actually not getting muscle fast enough. So challenge yourself, play with rep ranges. I like using rep ranges as different tools. I make very periodized and depth routines, and those of you that are going to take that leap, message us fat loss, you're going to see just how amazing the routines I make are, because they're custom and they're made for you. And for me, I like to start usually with compound movements where you're really challenging yourself. You're getting strength, gaining ability. So if you're doing a squat, deadlift, bench press, OHP, anything that is compound, you're going to get a lot of benefit out of it. I like to go a little bit heavier, a little bit harder, and sometimes I'll superset with like an AMRAP, and that can be really beneficial. So that's doing as many reps as possible after your last set, just to burn it out and get that feel. Just the same as I get later in my workout, when I find you more fatigued, it's probably not wise for you to be working near your maxes doing really heavy technical lifts, because you're already pre-fatigued and it can be a little more detrimental. So that's where I'll do maybe 15 reps for my tricep push downs or 20 reps for my kickbacks. But oftentimes for most people, you're going to be really set in that 5 to 15 rep range. So playing around in there, you can't really go wrong. It's a lot of benefit. And there's always reasons for the others, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20. Like they all have their place, but it gets a little more complicated. But toning, if you're over concerned with rep ranges, you're kind of missing the point. And instead, I would really just focus on your diet, and you can build a better package from that and have that assisted with your strength training.
Yeah, and even like looking at an example of, let's say, a pull day for us, there's going to be so many different variations. And an easy way to tell like when someone's lazy, I remember seeing this posted before, is like when trainers would just post like 3x10 and that's it for every single thing. And it's like, really, should they all be 3x10? But for example, let's say a deadlift, we might have 3x5 to 6, with some heavy weights. We might go into a barbell row, 6 to 8 reps for 3 sets. A lat pull down might be 10 to 12 reps. And then near the end, like some bicep curls, maybe 10 to 15 or 12 to 15 or something like that. But you can see things will change. And that's where so many people get stuck, is just doing the same reps for the rest of their life with not much change. They can't really increase the weights because they're just at a plateau. And there's so many things to consider. And that's why I find a lot of people also just struggle with their routines, because they just get bored, or they're trying to switch it up too quick, or they're just not doing the right stuff. And of course, that's where having someone who's done this for 10 plus years help them out will go such a long way. So that's the last thing I had to say about that.
Programming is complicated. I like to say it's like composing a song. You need choruses. You need it to start intelligently. Like you don't want to just jump into a song in the chorus. It's weird. It needs to build up into it. It needs to build out. There's so many things that go into it. And a routine is so similar. And that's where like I take a lot of passion in the routines I make, and really just making it for the person and the specificness of it. Like if I give someone who really likes light, soft music, screamo, they're gonna be like, what the heck? I'm not doing this. Maybe you're new to the gym and I have you doing 10 sets of 2 deadlift, 10 sets of 2 bench, and then like 50 ball slams. You're like, what the heck is this? Like, this isn't what I'm jumping into here. I'm not doing like hardcore powerlifting or something like that. And that's why routine should be made for you. It should have your goals. It should have your needs. It should have any background issues you have. You have injuries, it should work around there. It should be intelligent so it doesn't leave you getting injured, being overextended. There's just so many intricacies into it, and just following one off Google, you're really missing out. You're leaving a lot of gains on the table. That's where having a coach to make that for you, explain it to you, to be able to send form videos is just, it's an amazing resource, and it will completely transform. And that's why you see these photos of people just taking off fat, gaining a lot of muscle, amazing people just like you who are listeners, who reached out, who jumped into the program and saw amazing change. Well, I really want to challenge you to, if this is your goal, if this is something you want to achieve, put your money where your mouth is, invest in yourself, because you are worth it. Go ahead and message us Fat Loss on Instagram, @ColossusFit, to get that started. ColossusFit.